Emma Thompson had built walls around her heart and she liked it that way. At 35, she worked in one of London's tallest glass buildings, managing numbers and contracts for people she barely knew. Her days were the same every week. Wake up, coffee, work, home, sleep. It was safe and predictable. 2 years had passed since her mother died, and Emma had decided that caring too much only brought pain. She threw herself into work, staying late at the office and avoiding anything that might make her feel too much. Her colleagues respected her efficiency, but no one really knew her. That was exactly how she wanted it. One Tuesday morning, Emma's boss called a meeting. The company needed all employees to volunteer at local charities for at least 4 hours each month. It was part of their new community program and everyone had to participate. Emma sighed as she looked at the list of options. A food bank, an elderly care home, and St. Mary's Children's Hospital. She picked the hospital because it seemed the most straightforward. Read stories to sick children for a few hours on Saturday mornings, complete her requirement and get back to her normal life. Simple and efficient just like everything else she did. The following Saturday, Emma drove across London to St. Mary's Hospital. The building looked old but cheerful, with colorful murals painted on the outside walls. She felt nervous as she walked through the main entrance. The last time she had been in a hospital was when her mother was dying, and the memories made her stomach tight. The children's ward was on the 3rd floor. As the elevator doors opened, Emma stepped into a world that seemed completely opposite to her office. The walls were painted bright yellow and covered with drawings of animals, rainbows, and smiling faces. There were soft carpets instead of hard floors, and she could hear the sound of children's voices echoing down the hallways. A kind nurse named Mrs. Davies showed Emma to the playroom. It was a large, sunny space filled with books, toys, and small tables where children could sit and play. About 15 children were already gathering in a circle on colorful cushions, waiting for story time to begin. Emma was about to join them when she noticed a small boy sitting alone at a table in the corner. He had sandy brown hair that stuck up in different directions and bright blue eyes that seemed too big for his thin face. While the other children were excited and chatty, this boy was quietly drawing with colored pencils, completely absorbed in his work. Something about his peaceful concentration drew Emma toward him. She walked over to his table and sat down in the empty chair across from him. The boy looked up and gave her a smile that was so genuine and bright, it caught Emma completely off guard. "Hello there," Emma said, trying to sound friendly. "I'm Emma. What are you drawing?" The boy set down his pencil and turned the paper so she could see it better. "I'm Oliver," he said in a clear, confident voice. "I'm drawing the tree outside my window upstairs. But I'm making it purple because I think purple trees would make people smile more than regular brown ones. Don't you think so?" Emma looked at the drawing. It really was a purple tree, but not just any purple tree. This one had golden leaves that seemed to shimmer on the paper, and there were rainbow-colored birds sitting on every branch. At the base of the tree, Oliver had drawn children playing and laughing. "That's very creative," Emma said, not quite sure how to respond to such imagination. "Do you like to draw?" Oliver asked, picking up a green-colored pencil and offering it to her. His eyes were hopeful and friendly. The question surprised Emma. No one had asked her about drawing in years. "I used to when I was young," she heard herself saying. But that was a long time ago. She couldn't remember the last time she had drawn anything except charts and graphs for work presentations. As a child, she had loved art class and spent hours drawing pictures of flowers, houses, and imaginary worlds. But somewhere along the way she had decided that drawing was not practical or useful for real life. "You should try again," Oliver said simply, still holding out the green pencil. "Drawing makes everything better. Even when you're sad or scared, colors can help." Emma found herself taking the pencil. It felt strange and familiar at the same time, like holding hands with an old friend. Oliver pushed a piece of paper toward her and went back to working on his purple tree. For the next hour, Emma sat beside Oliver and watched him create impossible, beautiful worlds with his colored pencils. He drew flying cats, houses made of candy, and people with wings. Each drawing told a story, and Oliver explained every detail with enthusiasm and joy. Emma tried drawing too. At first, her hands felt stiff and uncertain. But slowly, she began to remember how it felt to create something just for the pleasure of creating it. She drew simple flowers and clouds, nothing as imaginative as Oliver's work, but it felt good anyway. As her volunteer time came to an end, Emma began packing up the art supplies. Oliver looked up at her with those bright blue eyes and asked, "Will you come back next week, Emma? I have more trees to draw, and I think you might like drawing them with me." Something in his voice, so hopeful and genuine, made Emma pause. She had planned to fulfill her volunteer hours as quickly as possible and move on. But looking at Oliver's expectant face, she found herself saying, "Yes, I'll come back." Walking to her car, Emma felt something strange and unfamiliar stirring in her chest. For the first time in months, she was actually looking forward to something other than work.
Emma Thompson had built walls
Emma
around
stood
her
in the art supply store,
holding a
at
small
35,
sketch pad
she
in her
worked in one
hands.
of London's
She had
tallest
walked
glass
past
buildings,
the store every day
managing
on her way
numbers
to
and
work for
contracts
3
for
years,
people she
but
barely
had
knew.
never gone inside.
Her days were the same
Now
every
she found
week.
herself
Wake
buying
up
colored
coffee,
pencils
work
and
and
drawing
home
paper.
It was
Telling
safe
herself
and
it was just
predictable.
to keep Oliver
2
busy
years
during
had
their
passed
next
since
visit.
her mother died,
But as she
and Emma
drove
had
to the
decided that
hospital,
carrying too
Emma
much
knew
only
she
brought
brought
pain to
pain.
herself.
She threw
The
herself
truth
into
was
work,
she had been
staying
thinking
late
about
at the
drawing
office
all
and
week.
avoiding anything
In
that might
quiet
make her
moments
feel
at
too
work,
much.
she had
Her
found herself
colleagues
doodling on
respected
her
her
efficiency,
efficiency,
meeting
but no
notes.
one really knew her.
Simple flowers
That
and
was
shapes,
exactly how she
nothing
wanted
special,
it.
but it
One
felt good
Tuesday
to move her
morning,
hand across
Emma's boss
paper in
called a
ways that
meeting.
had nothing to do
The
with
company
signing
needed
contracts
all
or writing
employees to
reports.
volunteer at local
When Emma
charities
walked
for
into
at
the
least
children's
4 hours
playroom,
each month.
Oliver's
It was
entire
part of
face
their new
brightened.
community program,
He was sitting
and
at the
everyone
same
had to
corner
participate.
table, but today he looked
Emma
tired.
sighed as she looked at
There
the
were
list
dark
of
circles
options.
under his blue
A
eyes,
food bank
and
and
his
elderly
sandy
care
hair was
home
messier
and
than
St.
usual.
Mary's Children's Hospital.
Still, his smile
She
was
picked
as
the
genuine
hospital
as ever.
because it seemed the most
Emma,
straightforward.
you came back.
Read
And you
stories to
brought
sick
drawing
children
paper.
for a few hours on
Oliver's
Saturday
voice
mornings,
was quieter than
complete
last
her
week,
requirement,
but
and
his
get back to her
excitement was
normal
clear.
life.
I
Simple
thought
and
we could draw
efficient, just
together,
like everything
Emma
else she
said,
did. Settling
the
into the
following
chair across
Saturday,
from him, Emma drove
she
across
opened the
London
sketch
to
pad
St.
and
Mary's
placed the
Hospital.
box of colored
The
pencils
building looked
between
old
them on
but
the table,
cheerful, with
Oliver
colorful murals
immediately
painted
reached
on the
for a
outside
red pencil
walls.
and began
She
drawing
felt
on a
nervous
fresh
as she
page.
walked through the main
As he
entrance.
worked, he talked about
The
his
last
week.
time she had been
He
in
told
a hospital
Emma about
was when
Nurse
her mother
Jenny,
was
who
dying,
could make
and the
animal
memories
sounds that
made
made
all the
stomach
children
tight.
laugh.
The children's ward
described
was on
Dr.
the third
Williams,
floor.
who always wore
As the
funny
elevator
socks with
doors
pictures of
opened,
cartoon
Emma
characters.
stepped into a world
Oliver
that seemed
talked about the
completely
stories
opposite
his
to
mother
her
read
office.
to him every
The
evening,
walls were
and
painted
how he
bright
imagined
yellow and
himself
covered
as
with
the
brave
brave heroes
heroes
in
in
those
those
tales.
rainbows and smiling
Emma found
faces.
herself truly
There
listening,
were soft
not
carpets
just
instead
waiting
of
for her
hard
turn to
floors,
speak like
and
she
she could hear
usually
the
did in
sound of children's
conversations.
voices echoing
Oliver's
down the
voice
hallways.
was soft and
A
musical,
kind nurse
and
named
his
Mrs.
stories
Davy
were full
showed
of wonder
Emma to the
and
playroom.
humor.
It
Even
was a
though he
large,
was talking
sunny
about
space
life in a
filled with
hospital,
books, toys,
surrounded
and
by
small
medical
tables where
equipment
children
and
could
worried
sit and
parents,
play.
everything
About
Oliver
15
said
children
seemed
were
touched with
already
joy.
gathering in a
As they
circle
drew
on
side by
colorful
side,
cushions,
Emma
waiting
felt
for
her
story time
storytelling
to
to
begin.
begin. The first time in
Emma
weeks.
was about to join
The
them when
hospital
she noticed
sounds
a small
faded into
boy
the
sitting
background.
alone at a table
The
in the
stress
corner.
of her job, the
He had
loneliness of
sandy
her
brown
empty
hair that
apartment,
stuck up in
the
different
grief she
directions
still
and
carried
bright
about
blue
her
eyes
mother,
that seemed too
all
big
of
for
it
his
seemed
thin
less
face.
heavy when she was
While
sitting
the
with
other
Oliver,
children were excited
moving
and
colored
chatty,
pencils
this
across
boy
white
was
paper.
quietly drawing
They
with
had been
colored
drawing for
pencils,
about an hour when
completely
Oliver
absorbed in
suddenly
his
put
work.
down his pencil
Something
and looked
about his
directly
peaceful
at Emma.
concentration drew
His
Emma
blue
toward
eyes
him.
were serious,
She
and
walked
Emma could
over
tell
to
he
his
was
table
thinking
and sat
carefully
down in
about
the empty
something
chair
important.
across from him.
"Can I
The
ask you
boy
something
looked up and
important?"
gave her a smile that
Oliver
was so
said.
genuine and
Emma
bright,
set down
it
her
caught
own
Emma
pencil and
completely
gave
off
him
her
guard.
full attention.
"Hello there,"
Of course,
Emma
Oliver,
said, trying to
what
sound
is it?
friendly. She
I'm
expected
Emma.
him to ask
What are you
about drawing
drawing?
techniques,
The boy
or maybe
set
about
down
her
his
job,
pencil and
or
turned
whether
the
she
paper
had
so she
children
could
of her
see it
own.
better.
Instead,
I'm Oliver,
Oliver
he
asked
said
a
in a
question
clear,
that stopped
confident
Emma's
voice.
heart for a moment.
I'm drawing the tree
Why don't
outside my
grown-ups
window
believe in
upstairs,
magic anymore?
but I'm making it
Emma
purple
felt like
because
someone
I
had
think
just
purple
asked
trees
her to
would make
explain
people
why the
smile
sky
more
was
than
blue
regular brown
or why
ones.
water was wet.
Don't you think so?
It was such a simple
Emma looked
question,
at the
but
drawing.
she had no idea
It really
how
was
to
a
answer
purple
it.
tree, but not
Well,
just any purple tree.
Magic isn't real,
This one
Oliver.
had golden
It's
leaves
just
that seemed to shimmer on
It's
the paper.
something we see in
and there were
movies and
rainbow-colored
fairy-tales.
birds sitting on every
Oliver
branch.
shook his head with the
At the
seriousness
base of the
of someone
tree,
much older
Oliver
than
had
7.
drawn children
But it
playing
is
and
real,
laughing.
Emma.
I
That's
see it
very
every day
creative,
right here in
Emma
this
said,
hospital.
not quite sure
Emma
how to
frowned,
respond to such
confused.
imagination.
What do you mean? Do you like to draw?
Like when Nurse Jenny
Oliver
makes funny
asked,
faces
picking
to
up a
cheer
green
up kids
colored
who are
pencil
crying
and
after their
offering it to her.
treatments.
Oliver
His eyes were
explained
hopeful
patiently.
and friendly. Or when
The
my mom
question
reads me
surprised
stories
Emma.
and suddenly I can
No one
see
had
whole
asked her
worlds
about
in my
drawing
head
in years.
with castles and
I used
dragons
to
and
when I
brave
was
knights.
young, she
Or
heard
when the
herself
cleaning
saying.
lady, Mrs.
But that
Peters,
was a long time
comes
ago. how she works and
She
makes
couldn't
everyone
remember the
feel
last
peaceful.
time she had drawn
That's
anything
magic,
except
isn't it?
charts and graphs
Emma
for
struggled
work
to find
presentations.
words. As a
Those are
child,
just
she had
nice
loved
things
art
people
class
do,
and spent
Oliver.
hours drawing
Kind
pictures
things.
of flowers,
But they're not
houses,
magic.
and imaginary
But
worlds.
that is magic.
But somewhere along
Oliver
the way,
insisted,
she had
his
decided
voice
that
getting
drawing was
stronger,
not practical
making
or useful
sad
for
people
real
happy
life.
when they thought
You
nothing
should
could
try
cheer them
again,
up.
Oliver
Making
said
sick
simply,
people feel
still
better,
holding out
even
the
if
green
it's just
pencil.
for a little while.
Drawing makes everything
Making ordinary
better.
things beautiful,
Even when you're
like
sad
when you
or
helped me
scared,
draw yesterday
colors
and
can
my
help.
purple tree looked
Emma
even
found
more
herself
special
taking
because
the
we made it
pencil.
together.
It felt
When did you
strange
stop
and
seeing
familiar
it?
at the same
The
time,
question
like
hit
holding
Emma
hands
like
with
an
an
old
old
friend.
friend.
When had
Oliver
she
pushed
stopped
a piece
seeing
of
magic
paper
in
toward her
everyday
and went
kindness?
back to working on
She
his
remembered
purple
being a
tree.
child and
For the
believing
next
that her
hour,
grandmother's
Emma
hugs
sat
could
beside
heal any
Oliver
hurt,
and watched
and
him
her
create
father's
impossible
impossible
stories could
beautiful
transport
worlds
her
with his
anywhere
colored
in the
pencils.
universe. That
He
her
drew
own drawings
flying
had the
cats,
power to
houses
make
made
her
of
friends
candy,
smile
and
on
people with
sad
wings.
days.
I
Each
don't
drawing
know,
told a
Emma
story,
whispered,
and Oliver
she realized
explained
it was
every
the most
detail with
honest thing she had
enthusiasm
said
and
to
joy.
anyone in years.
Emma tried drawing
Oliver
too.
reached across
At
the
first,
table
her
and
hands
patted
felt
her
stiff
hand with
and
his
uncertain.
small, warm fingers.
But slowly she
It's
began
okay,
to
Emma.
remember how it
Maybe
felt
you
to
just
create
forgot.
something just for the
But you can
pleasure of
remember
creating
again.
it. I
She
can
drew
help you if
simple
you want.
flowers and clouds.
For the rest of
Nothing
their
as
time
imaginative
together,
as Oliver's
Oliver
work,
became Emma's
but
teacher.
it felt good anyway.
He pointed out
As
how
her
the
volunteer
afternoon
time
sun
came
came
to an
streaming
end,
through the
Emma
hospital
began
windows
packing
made
up the
patterns
art
on the floor
supplies.
that looked exactly
Oliver
like
looked up at
dancing
her with those
butterflies.
bright blue eyes
He
and
showed
asked,
her how to
"Will
listen
you
to the
come back
hospital
next
sounds
week, Emma?
differently so that
I
the
have
beeping
more
machines
machines
and
to draw,
rolling
and I
carts
think you
became
might
a kind
like
of
drawing
rhythm
them with
almost
me."
like music.
Something in his
He
voice,
made her
so
laugh by
hopeful
giving
and
different
genuine,
voices
made
to
Emma
all the
pause.
characters they drew.
She had planned
turning
to
their
fulfill
simple
her volunteer
sketches into
hours
a
as
whole
quickly as
theater
possible
performance
and move on.
As Emma drove
looking
home
at
that
Oliver's
evening,
expectant
Oliver's
face,
question
she found
played
herself
over and
saying,
over in her mind.
"Yes, I'll come back."
She found herself
Walking
looking at
into
the
her
world
car,
differently.
Emma felt
The
something
clouds in the
strange
sky
and
weren't just
unfamiliar
clouds
stirring in
anymore.
her chest.
One looked
For
like
the
a
first
sailing
time in
ship,
months, she was
another
actually
like a
looking
sleeping
forward
cat.
to something other
The
than
trees
work.
lining the road seemed to wave at her in the evening breeze. She shook her head and tried to focus on driving, but something fundamental had shifted inside her, like a door that had been locked for years had suddenly creaked open. In the weeks that followed, Emma found that Oliver's simple question had planted itself in her mind like a seed. During boring meetings at work, when her colleagues talked about numbers and profits, she would suddenly remember the way Oliver's blue eyes had looked at her with such genuine curiosity. Why don't grown-ups believe in magic anymore? The question would pop into her thoughts at the strangest moments. Emma began to notice things she had walked past for years without seeing. The morning sunlight that came through her office window created beautiful patterns on her desk. The man who owned the coffee shop downstairs always greeted every customer with a warm smile, even when he looked tired. During her lunch breaks in the small park near her building, she watched an elderly man who came every single day to feed the pigeons. He spoke to them softly and seemed to know each bird personally. These small observations felt like tiny discoveries. Emma realized she had been moving through her life with her eyes closed, seeing only what was necessary for work and survival. Now, something was waking up inside her, like a part of herself that had been sleeping for a very long time. But it was her Saturday visits with Oliver that truly began to transform her. Each week, Emma learned more about this remarkable 7-year-old boy. Oliver had been in the hospital for 3 months now. The doctors were still trying to understand exactly what was wrong with him, running tests and trying different treatments. Despite all this uncertainty about his health, Oliver faced each new day with curiosity and hope that left Emma amazed. During one visit, Oliver surprised Emma with a gift. He had been working quietly at their usual corner table when he suddenly pushed a small drawing across to her. It showed 2 people sitting together, one tall figure with long dark hair, and one small figure with messy sandy hair. Both figures were holding colored pencils and smiling at each other. "That's us," Oliver explained with obvious pride in his work. "I wanted to make a picture so I could remember our drawing time together." Emma felt her throat become tight with emotion. "It's beautiful, Oliver. Thank you so much." Oliver beamed at her response, then pulled out a small notebook that was filled with his drawings. "I make pictures of all the good things that happen," he told her, flipping through the pages. "See? Here's Dr. Williams telling his funny jokes that make everyone laugh. Here's Mrs. Anderson, the lady who brings the therapy dogs every Thursday. And here's you, Emma, when you smile." Emma looked at the drawing of herself and was surprised by what she saw. In Oliver's artistic eyes, she looked truly happy and peaceful. She could not remember the last time she had actually felt that way, but somehow, sitting in this hospital room with this extraordinary child, she was beginning to feel something like happiness again. "Oliver," Emma said carefully, choosing her words with thought, "aren't you ever scared about being here? Or angry that you have to be in the hospital instead of at home or school?" Oliver put down his pencil and considered her question with the seriousness of someone much older than 7. "Sometimes I do get scared," he admitted honestly. "And sometimes I feel sad that I can't go home yet. But being scared or angry doesn't help me get better faster. And there's always something good happening too, even here." He pointed toward the hallway. "Like yesterday, Tommy in the room next to mine took his first steps after his big surgery. Everyone cheered, even the doctors. And Mrs. Patterson down the hall got a video call from her granddaughter showing off her new puppy. Good things happen even in places that seem sad." That evening, Emma drove home with Oliver's words echoing in her mind. When she reached her apartment, she did something she had not done since she was a child. Instead of turning on the television or checking her work emails, Emma took out her sketch pad and sat at her kitchen table. Without planning or overthinking, she let her hand move across the paper with colored pencils. She drew Oliver's bright smile. She drew the view from the hospital window that showed the old oak tree in the courtyard. She drew the impossible purple tree from Oliver's imagination, complete with golden leaves and rainbow birds. As Emma drew, memories came flooding back like water through a broken dam. She remembered art classes in primary school where she had felt completely alive and free. She remembered dreams of becoming an illustrator, of creating beautiful pictures that would make people smile. She remembered how making something beautiful with her own hands had once made her feel connected to the whole world. Emma had given up all of those dreams for practical reasons. She had chosen a stable job that paid well and provided security. But looking at her drawings now, spread across her kitchen table, Emma realized she had given up much more than just a career in art. She had given up a fundamental part of who she was meant to be. The next morning, Emma made a decision that surprised even herself. She called her supervisor and said she was feeling unwell and would not be coming to work. This was something Emma had never done unless she was genuinely sick. Instead of going to her office, Emma spent the entire day at the hospital. She did not just visit during the regular hours. Emma volunteered wherever the staff needed help. She read stories aloud to children who were too weak to hold books themselves. She helped serve lunch to worried families who were keeping watch over their loved ones. She sat with Oliver and drew picture after picture, feeling with each drawing that she was finding her way back to a part of herself she had lost.
As
In
the
the weeks
leaves
that followed,
changed colors
Emma
and fell
found
from
that
the
Oliver's
trees,
simple
Emma's
question
life
had
began
planted
to
itself
change
in
too,
her mind like
but
a
in
seed.
ways she had never
During
expected.
boring meetings at
She
work,
still went to her
when
job
her
at the
colleagues talked
financial
about
company
numbers
every
and
day,
profits,
still sat in
she
the
would
same
suddenly
meetings and
remember
worked
the
with
way
the same
Oliver's
numbers.
blue eyes had
But
looked
now
at her
she had
with such
arranged with her
genuine
boss to
curiosity.
leave work early
Why
every
don't
Friday
grown-ups
afternoon.
believe in magic anymore?
She spent her entire
The question
weekends
would
at St.
pop into
Mary's
her
Hospital,
thoughts at the
not
strangest
because she
moments.
had to,
Emma
but because
began
she
to
wanted
notice
to.
things she had
What
walked
had
past
started
for
as a
years without
requirement
seeing.
from her company
The
had
morning
become the
sunlight
part of
that
her
came
week
through
that
her
Emma
office
looked
window
forward to
created
most.
beautiful patterns
She
on
found
her
herself
desk.
thinking about the
The
children
man who
during
owned
her
the coffee
work
shop
days,
downstairs
wondering how
always
Oliver
greeted
was
every
feeling,
customer with
whether
a warm
little Lucy
smile.
had finished
Even
the
when
drawing
he
she
looked
was
tired.
working on.
During
If
her
Tommy
lunch
was
breaks
getting
in the
stronger
small
after
park
his
near her
surgery,
building, she
Oliver's
watched
health
an
went up
elderly
and
man
down
who
like a
came
roller
every
coaster.
single day to feed the
Some
pigeons.
days when Emma arrived,
He spoke
would
to
be
them
sitting up
softly
in
and
bed,
seemed to know
full
each
of
bird
energy and
personally.
ready to chat about
These small
everything he had seen
observations
and
felt
thought
like
about
tiny
during the
discoveries.
week. He would have
Emma
new
realized
stories
she had
about
been
the
moving
nurses,
through her
new
life
drawings
with
to
her eyes
show her,
closed,
new
seeing
ideas for
only
art
what was
projects they
necessary
could do
for
together.
work and survival.
Other days Oliver
Now,
was very
something
tired.
was waking up
The
inside
treatments
her,
made him feel
like a
weak
part
and
of herself
sleepy.
that had been
On
sleeping
those
for a
days
very
he was
long time.
content to have Emma
But it was
simply
her
sit
Saturday
quietly
visits
beside
with
his
Oliver
hospital
that
bed,
truly began to
sometimes
transform
holding
her.
his small hand
Each
while he
week,
rested.
Emma learned more
Through
about
all of
this
these ups and
remarkable
downs,
7-year-old
Oliver
boy.
never lost
Oliver
his
had
amazing
been in the
ability to
hospital
find
for
wonder
3
in the
months now.
smallest things.
The doctors
He
were
could
still
make
trying
even
to
the most
understand
ordinary
exactly
moments
what was
feel
wrong with
special
him,
and meaningful.
running tests and
One
trying
cold
different
December
treatments.
afternoon,
Despite
Emma
all
was
this
sitting with Oliver
uncertainty
in
about
his
his
hospital
health,
room when he
Oliver
suddenly
faced
became
each new
very
day
still.
with curiosity
He
and
was
hope
looking
that left
toward the
Emma
window
amazed.
with wide, excited
During one
eyes.
visit,
Emma
Oliver
look,
surprised Emma
Oliver
with a
whispered,
gift.
pointing toward the window.
He had been working
Look
quietly at their
outside.
usual corner
Emma
table
turned to
when
see
he
what
suddenly
had captured
captured
his
small
attention.
drawing across to her.
Snow was beginning
It
to
showed
fall,
two
the
people
first
sitting
snow of the
together,
winter.
one tall
The
figure
large,
with long
soft
dark
flakes
hair,
drifted
and
past
one
the
small
window,
figure with
and in
messy
the warm
sandy
yellow
hair.
light from
Both
Oliver's room,
figures were
each
holding colored
snowflake
pencils
looked like a
and
tiny
smiling at
dancing
each other.
star spinning through
"That's
the air.
us,"
Oliver
It's
explained
beautiful,
with obvious
Emma
pride
said,
in
and
his
she
work.
discovered that she
I
truly
wanted to
meant
make a
it.
picture so I
Just
could
a few
remember
months
our
ago,
drawing time
snow
together.
would have made Emma think
Emma
about
felt her
traffic
throat become
problems,
tight
wet
with
shoes,
emotion
and the inconvenience
It's
of winter
beautiful
weather.
Oliver.
Now,
Thank you
seeing
so
it
much.
through Oliver's eyes,
Oliver
she saw
beamed at her
magic floating
response,
down from the
then
sky.
pulled out a small
Oliver
notebook
watched
that was
the snow
filled
for
with his
several
drawings.
minutes, his
I
face
make pictures
glowing
of
with
all the good
happiness.
things that happen.
Then he turned
He
to
told
Emma
her,
with an
flipping
excited
through the
expression,
pages. Though his
"See?
voice was still
Here's
weak
Dr.
from his
Williams
treatments.
telling his funny
I
jokes
have
that
an
make
idea,
everyone laugh."
Oliver said.
"Here's Mrs.
Can we make
Anderson,
pictures
the
of
lady
winter
who brings
magic
the
for the
therapy
other
dogs
kids?
every Thursday.
Some of them are too
And
sick
here's
to get
you,
out of
Emma,
bed
when
and
you
go to the
smile."
windows.
Emma
They
looked
can't
at the
see how
drawing of
beautiful the
herself and
snow
was
is.
surprised by what
Emma
she
felt
saw.
her heart filled
In
with
Oliver's
love for this
artistic
generous,
eyes, she
thoughtful
looked truly
child.
happy and
Even
peaceful.
when he was not feeling
She could
well
not remember
himself,
the last time
Oliver
she had
was
actually
thinking
felt
about
that
how to
way,
bring
but
joy to
somehow,
other
sitting
children
in this
who might be
hospital
sadder
room
or
with this
sicker than he
extraordinary
was.
child.
That's
She
a
was
wonderful
beginning to
idea,
feel something
Oliver,
like happiness
Emma
again.
said.
Let's
Oliver,
create winter
Emma said
magic that
carefully,
everyone can
choosing her
see.
words with thought.
Emma had brought
Aren't
a
you
new
ever
set of
scared about
watercolor
being here?
paints along with their
Or angry
usual
that you
colored
have to be in
pencils.
the hospital
She
instead
set
of
up
at
their
home
art
or school?
supplies on the rolling
Oliver
table
put down
beside
his
Oliver's
pencil
bed,
and considered
and
her
they
question
began to
with the
work together.
seriousness of someone
Oliver
much older
drew
than
snowmen
7.
that seemed to have distinct
Sometimes I do get
personalities.
scared.
Some
He
were
admitted
jolly and
honestly.
round,
And
others were
sometimes
tall
I feel
and
sad
thin,
that I can't
and
go
one was
home
wearing
yet.
what looked like a
But
top
being
hat made
scared
of
or
icicles.
angry doesn't help me get
He
better
drew
faster.
icicles hanging
And
from
there's always
imaginary something good
roofs that
happening
looked like
too,
crystal
even here.
chandeliers
He
sparkling
pointed
in the
toward the
winter sun.
hallway. Emma
Like
found
yesterday,
herself
Tommy
drawing
in
the
the
room next to
freedom and
mind
joy
took
she
his
had
first
not felt
steps
since
into
she
his
was a
big
child.
surgery.
She
Everyone
painted
cheered,
snow-covered
even the
trees that
doctors.
looked like they were
And
wearing
Mrs.
white
Patterson
party
down
dresses,
the hall got a
and
video
winter
call
birds
from
with
her
bright red
granddaughter
chests
showing off
sitting
her
on
new
snowy
puppy.
branches.
Good things
Her
happen
hands
even in
moved
places
across
that
the
seem
paper
sad.
without worry about
That
making
evening,
mistakes
Emma
or
drove
creating
home
something
with Oliver
perfect.
words echoing
She was
in her
simply
mind.
enjoying the act
When she
of
reached her
creating something
apartment,
beautiful.
she did something she
As
had
they
not
worked,
done since she was
other
a
children
child.
began to notice
Instead
what they
of
were
turning
doing.
on the television
First,
or checking
Lucy,
her work
a
emails,
6-year-old girl
Emma
from the
took
room
out her
down the
sketch
hall,
pad and sat
appeared
at her
in the
kitchen
doorway.
table. She had
Without
been watching
planning
them
or
work for several
overthinking,
minutes before
she let her
spoke.
hand move across the
Miss
paper
Emma,
with colored
Lucy
pencils.
said in a shy voice.
She drew
What are
Oliver's
you and
bright
Oliver
smile.
making? She drew
We're
the view
creating
from the
winter
hospital
magic,
window that
Emma
showed the
said
old
with a
oak
smile.
tree in the courtyard.
Would you like to draw
She
with
drew
us?
the impossible
Lucy
purple
nodded
tree
eagerly
from
and
Oliver's
came to join them
imagination,
at the table,
complete with golden
Soon,
leaves and
word
rainbow
spread
birds.
through the children's ward
As
about
Emma
the
drew,
art project
memories
happening
came
in
flooding
Oliver's
back
room.
like water through
More
a
children
broken
began
dam.
to arrive.
She remembered
Some
art
walking,
classes in
others in
primary school where
wheelchairs,
she had
and
felt
a few who
completely
brought their
alive and
medical
free.
equipment with them
She
on rolling
remembered dreams
stands.
of becoming an
Emma looked
illustrator,
around at the
of
growing
creating
group of
beautiful
young
pictures
artists
that would make people
There were
smile.
children with bandages
She remembered
covering
how
parts
making
of their
something
heads.
beautiful with
Kids
her own
wearing
hands
medical
had once made
bracelets
her
that
feel
monitored their
connected to
health.
the whole world.
Some who had tubes
Emma
and
had
wires
given up
attached
all
to
of those
machines
dreams
that helped
for
them
practical
breathe or
reasons.
receive medicine.
She had chosen
But
a stable
despite
job
all of
that
these
paid
signs
well
of
and
illness
provided
and medical
security.
treatment,
But
every
looking at
single
her
child
drawings
was
now,
completely
spread
focused
across
on
her kitchen
creating
table,
something beautiful.
Emma realized she
Their
had given up
faces were
much
bright
more than
with
just a career
concentration
in
and
art.
happiness.
She had given
This
up
is
a
what I meant
fundamental
about
part
magic,
of who she was meant to
Oliver
be.
said quietly
The next
to Emma
morning,
as they watched
Emma
the
made
other
a decision
children
that
work on their
surprised
winter
even
scenes.
herself.
Look how
She
happy
called her
everyone is.
supervisor and said
Look
she
how
was
this
feeling
room that was
unwell
sad
and
and
would not
quiet
be coming
became
to
a
work.
room full of laughter
This was
and
something
joy.
Emma had never
Emma
done
nodded,
unless she was
finally
genuinely
understanding
sick.
what Oliver
Instead
had been
of going
trying
to
to
her
teach her all
office,
these months.
Emma spent the entire
Magic
day
was
at
not
the
about
hospital.
fairy tales or
She did not
impossible
just
things
visit
that only
during the
happened in
regular
movies.
hours.
Real
Emma
magic was
volunteered
about the
wherever the
human
staff
ability
needed
to
help.
create happiness
She
and
read
beauty,
stories aloud to
even when
children who were too
circumstances
weak
were
to hold
difficult.
books themselves.
It was about
She
people
helped
connecting
serve
with
lunch
each
to
other
worried
and sharing
families who were
kindness.
keeping watch
It was
over their
about
loved
having the
ones.
courage to
She
believe
sat
that good
with
things
Oliver
were
and
always
drew
possible,
picture after picture,
even in the darkest
feeling
times.
with each drawing that she was
evening,
finding
as
her
Emma
way
was
back
getting
to a
ready
part
to
of
leave the
herself she had
hospital,
lost.
Dr. Williams stopped her in the hallway. He was Oliver's main doctor, a kind man who always took time to really listen to his young patients. Emma, Dr. Williams said, I wanted to thank you for everything you've been doing here. The children's spirits have been so much brighter since you started coming regularly. Whatever you're doing with them, it's making a real difference in their healing. Emma felt touched by his words, but she knew the truth. I think they're the ones making a difference to me, she replied honestly. Walking to her car through the snowy hospital parking lot, Emma made a decision that had been growing in her heart for weeks. She pulled out her phone and called her supervisor at the financial company, asking to schedule a meeting for Monday morning. She had something very important to discuss about her future with the company. For the first time in years, Emma felt genuinely excited about what tomorrow might bring. Spring came early that year, filling the hospital with soft sunlight and the sound of birds singing outside the windows. With the warmer weather came news that Emma had been hoping and praying for during all these months. Oliver's treatment was finally working. After so many weeks of uncertainty, of good days followed by difficult days, the doctors were now confident and optimistic about his recovery. Oliver would be going home soon. When Dr. Williams shared this wonderful news with Emma, she felt pure happiness flood through her entire body. Oliver was going to be healthy again. He would get to go back to his own bedroom, play in his own garden, and return to school with his friends. But mixed with this joy was something Emma had not expected to feel, a deep sadness at the thought of not seeing Oliver every day. Over the past 6 months, their friendship had become the most important part of Emma's life. Oliver was the anchor that kept her connected to what truly mattered. He had taught her to see beauty in simple things, to find hope even in difficult situations, and to believe in the magic of human kindness. The thought of Saturday mornings without Oliver felt like losing a piece of her heart. On Oliver's last day as a patient at St. Mary's Hospital, he had prepared something special for Emma. He had been working on it secretly for weeks, asking the nurses for help when Emma was not there. As they sat together at their familiar corner table for the final time, Oliver carefully pulled out a folded piece of paper. I made this for you, Oliver said, his blue eyes bright with excitement and emotion. It's something very special. Emma unfolded the paper and gasped softly. The drawing showed a woman with long dark hair standing in front of a large easel. All around her were children of different ages, some sitting at tables, others standing, all of them painting and drawing with happy expressions on their faces. The room in the picture was filled with colorful artwork hanging on the walls and art supplies scattered on every surface. Above the entire scene, written in Oliver's careful 7-year-old handwriting, were the words, Miss Emma's Magic Art Room. This is what I see when I close my eyes and think about you, Oliver explained seriously. You helping kids make beautiful things and feel happy just like you helped me feel happy even when I was scared and sick. Emma felt tears beginning to gather in her eyes as she looked at the drawing. Oliver, this is the most beautiful thing anyone has ever given me. But you know I work at an office building, right? I help people with money and numbers and business reports. Oliver shook his head with the confidence of someone who could see truth more clearly than adults. That's your job, Emma. But this, he pointed firmly to his drawing, this is who you really are inside. I can tell because of how you smile when you're teaching us to draw, and how you always know exactly what to say when someone feels sad. That same afternoon,
Emma walked into her supervisor's office at the financial company for what she knew would be the last time. After 12 years of working in the same building, sitting in the same meetings and managing the same types of accounts, Emma was giving her official notice that she would be leaving the company. Her colleagues and supervisor thought Emma had completely lost her mind. They could not understand why she would leave a stable, well-paying position without having another job already arranged. The benefits were excellent, the salary was good, and Emma had been successful in her role. To them it seemed like professional suicide. But Emma had never been more certain of any decision in her entire life. For months she had been carefully saving every penny she could spare. She had been researching and planning, making phone calls and writing letters. Emma was going to start her own art therapy program for children in hospitals. She would travel to different medical centers, bringing art supplies and creative activities, helping young patients express their feelings and find moments of beauty and joy even during the most difficult times in their lives. The transition was not easy. Emma had to learn about business licenses, insurance requirements and medical regulations. She had to convince hospital administrators to try something new. She had to prove that art therapy could really help children heal, not just physically but emotionally too. But every time Emma felt discouraged or overwhelmed, she would look at Oliver's drawing of Miss Emma's Magic Art Room, and remember why this work mattered so much. 3 months after leaving her corporate job, Emma stood in the children's ward at St. Mary's Hospital once again. But this time she was not a volunteer fitting in a few hours between other responsibilities. Emma was now a professional art therapist, officially hired by the hospital to run their brand new creative healing program. The room looked almost exactly like Oliver's drawing had predicted. There were easels and art supplies everywhere. The walls were covered with colorful paintings and drawings created by the young patients. Children of all ages were scattered around the space, some painting at easels, others working with clay or colored pencils, all of them completely absorbed in the joy of creating something with their own hands. The magic that Emma had first discovered through Oliver's eyes was now filling an entire room, touching the lives of dozens of children and their families every single week. Oliver, now completely healthy and back in school, came to visit Emma's art room every Saturday morning. He was no longer a patient, but he had become Emma's special assistant, helping new children feel welcome and showing them that art could be a powerful way to express feelings that were too big or complicated for words. "See," Oliver whispered to Emma one afternoon as they watched a shy 8-year-old girl smile for the first time since arriving at the hospital. "I told you this was who you really are." Emma squeezed Oliver's hand gently, feeling grateful beyond words for this remarkable child who had changed her entire life. "You were right, Oliver. You helped me remember something very important that I had forgotten." "What's that?" Oliver asked, looking up at her with those wise blue eyes. "That magic isn't something that just happens to us," Emma said. "Magic is something we create for each other through kindness, creativity, and love." As the afternoon sunlight streamed through the hospital windows, creating rainbow patterns through the crystal sun catchers that the children had made, Emma realized that Oliver's simple question months ago had led her exactly where she was meant to be. Sometimes the most difficult questions lead to the most beautiful answers, and sometimes the wisdom of a child can show us the way back to who we were always meant to become. The end.